Ryan Reynolds is a cop in Boston. The movie calls him a crooked cop. We'll get into why that's kind of weird, but he's a crooked cop in Boston who gets killed and winds up in some sort of afterlife thing where he is recruited, like blackmailed into being recruited into the RIPD, the Rest in Peace Department, if you couldn't figure that out yourself.
Yeah, it's very clever. It's great. Great title. Rolls off the tongue.
I actually thought they were going to make it stand for something, like, for real. Like, I thought they was going to have, alternate words than Rest in Peace. But it literally is just Rest in Peace Department.
Yeah, maybe, like, you're part of the RIPD, and then it's like, what, the Rest in Peace Department? And then... Yeah. Something.
Yeah, and then they explain that it actually stands for something weird. That just feels... I don't know. It just feels strange because that doesn't mean anything. Rest in Peace Department doesn't mean anything. It doesn't imply anything. It doesn't say that they're police.
Well, what do? They go around and they cap escaped souls from the afterlife that are trying to roam about the world freely again.
And send them back to hell or whatever.
Yeah. So they chase around these lost souls that return to Earth, who are called Deados.
The worst.
I hate that. I hate it so much.
Well, it's like, I feel like, it's like Deadite from Evil Dead, but just, fucking stupid.
Yeah, they wanted, like, unique terminology for the movie, and maybe for merchandising, or maybe just in general. I don't know, but it's the worst they could have come up with.
I mean, I like my Deado t-shirt. I mean, I think it's great, and the sweatpants and my popcorn bin with my favorite Deado, the fat Deado on it. I thought it worked, but
Dylan, all Deados with a fat Deado.
Ryan Reynolds, his avatar is an old Chinese man who's played by character actor James Hong, you may recognize from like every movie you've ever loved.
Yeah, he's great.
He got the two biggest laughs of the whole movie.
Yeah, because it's when they abruptly cut to him instead of Ryan Reynolds. Like Ryan Reynolds is pointing a gun, and then it cuts to James Hong, and he's holding a banana. It's like, okay, that's pretty funny.
That is funny.
But they don't make use of that like it nearly enough. They don't do enough visual gags with the fact that they look like an old Asian man in a like attractive bimbo blonde woman.
Yeah. It's a funny concept, and it's funny because they constantly reference it to the point where it's like, okay, I get it, but it also never pays off and is super funny, like intended.
I think what we kind of realized when we were watching the bonus features, there's like a concept art piece that shows a lot of scenes, except it's Ryan Reynolds and Jeff Bridges are the woman and the man, the old man, the whole time for like the whole scene. And so it shows like a lot of opportunities for them to have done these visual gags. Like there's a scene where Jeff Bridges pushes Ryan Reynolds out a window because they can't be hurt really because they're dead. And so he rides him like a cowboy, and then it cuts, or in that scene in the concept art, it's like the woman's on top of him like she's riding him, but it's like we slowly start to realize that all of the things they didn't include were like sexually there were sexual things.
Things are gonna come at you fast, they're gonna come hot, and they're gonna come wet.
So I think maybe whoever wrote it just made all those gags like weird sexual things, so the producers were like, maybe we don't do so much of that.
Yeah, so
which is fair.
Yeah, maybe there was a rated R cut at some point then.
Unclear. Maybe just a raunchy or PG-13, but like they cut, like, and you can tell in some of the alternate scenes and stuff, they were supposed to cut to these people more definitely in the screenplay level, but even when they had shot a bunch of the movie, and now they cut to him like so sparingly that it like
you forget that it's a thing.
Except for the fact that they say it to each other every 5 seconds.
The characters constantly reference it through dialogue,
but we never
never see it. And that's one of the alternate scenes. This is the end of second act breakdown, where they're at their lowest point. They're at threat of being removed from the RIPD. They might be, completely deleted from life, erased, or whatever they call it. And Ryan Reynolds tries to connect with his wife, who is jogging at a stadium, which is established in the original opening scene, not in this one. But anyway, he walks up to her, and it's played very creepy, and she's like, "I don't recognize you," but the whole entire time it's just Ryan Reynolds.
Who are you? Why are you following me, huh?
But in the alternate version that's included on the disc, it is intercut with Mr. Hong being there, which makes it read a lot better.
Yes. Yeah, it makes you understand why she's like at first, like she's creeped out, but then he does this weird thing where he like touches her lip, and I guess that's like a thing that they used to do. So she kind of is like, wait a minute, is it really him? But then she still is like, nah, and then runs away. But yeah, that scene would have landed so much more if it actually intercut. But they just never do it.
Yeah. The studio just seems to have, in the edit, downplayed that element of it, which, if you, in the behind the scenes interviews, it's just like they're constantly talking about it, and the back of the disc is talking about it all the time. The writers clearly were invested in this idea of avatars, but then it was just ripped out in post.
Yeah, it just should have been consistent. I also want to note, while we just introduced sort of the Deados, how much I hate them.
They're awful.
I cannot describe to you how much I hate their designs. They're, as Aaron mentioned, they're just weird amorphous blobs that are like, most of them are just like gluttonous fat guys. That's what they turn into. And it's like, it's so unpleasant and so just like unappealing, and not like in a good way.
And some of them just look like people with like real life people with just regular everyday, like deformities and disabilities. Is like some of them just look like burn victims.
Yeah, which is like what because I was like, I think I mentioned this to Aaron while we were watching, and it was like, okay, so wouldn't it make more sense if instead of like being these weird like nothing character designs, if they each displayed the sort of injury or whatever it was that killed them in the design.
Oh, you mean like Beetlejuice?
Yeah, or apparently Aaron mentioned the Frighteners does that, I guess.
Yes, the Frighteners too.
And it's like, yeah, why didn't, like, it's like, sure, that would just be ripping off other things, but at least that makes sense.
Well, yeah. The whole premise is just ripping off other things.
Oh,
so,
yeah,
I mean,
it's just Men in Black with Deados or whatever.
Yeah, why not just try to take some of the elements that work from other things in the details too, you know?
And they do a little, there's like a few of them that have that sort of, like Kevin Bacon, spoilers, he's a deado, whatever. When we learn that he has sort of a weird like gash in his head that's almost something.
Almost.
But I just don't understand why like the vast majority of them are just weird like fatzos.
Well, yeah, the silhouette is also of his just isn't strong enough. Like the chunks out of his head aren't big enough. Yeah. But they put so much effort into CGIing Kevin Bacon.
I leaned over to Evan when we were watching this, and I was like, there is no way in hell they look like that in the comic book. No artist in this world, even a poor one, would design that for a comic book. And and then that's when we find out the behind the scenes, and I flipped through some pages of the comic book, like, because they're demons in the original context, and they each have like, they're all like blocky and cartoonish.
Yeah, they're fun little like demons. It's like, that's something, man. Like the... Ugh, I can't stand how they look.
It's horrendous. It's really just embarrassing.
Yeah.
God. It's just a blob. Like, literally one of them is a fat guy who, like, in his human form is just fat, but then he gets super fat, you know?
Yeah, it's like, what does that signify? Or, like, I don't...
Was he the gluttony guy from Seven? Is that how he died?
maybe that's the thought process. I have no idea.